Checking in from Sydney, Australia, we will talk about travel surprises, the ease of companionship, and we will hear the story of Baz Luhrmann, someone who rearranged cinema from the edge of the world. Welcome to Beyond the Template. Welcome to Beyond the Template, everyone. I'm Caroline, and I'm so excited you are all here. Here's what you can expect from me in the next 15 to 25 minutes. Number one, you will be inspired and motivated. That's the point of this podcast. Number two, you will hear about my own adventures because I'm the hostess with the mostest, and I practice what I preach by embodying what I say through my professional and personal life. Number three, you will hear the story of someone who might seem from the outside like they are a chosen one or a golden child or someone better than other people, but they aren't. They're just like us. I tell their stories so we can follow in their footsteps and also be awesome just like they are. I call these people expanders. They all started with not much, but they rose to great heights through determination and collaboration. Number four, this is the More Than Just Talk podcast. We are all here to get shit done for ourselves and for the world. So I hope if you were listening today, you continue to work towards your own aspirations and dreams. And to help with that, I always end the episode with a reflection question to get you started. Before we get going, I want to remind everyone of some core messaging that stands true within my business and how I support my clients. Just as with the Expander of the Week, you are amazing just as you are, even if it doesn't feel that way. You might think you need something that miraculously gives you a new personality, new skills, and maybe even that you have to fit yourself into a cookie-cutter system or mindset in order to be successful. None of this is true. And I'm quite sick of watching the brilliant, sensitive creatives of the world be told there's something wrong with the way that they are. Stop beating yourself up for not being amazing at everything, especially with those skills and tasks that feel like roadblocks, impossible barriers, or so confusing you become frozen and shut down or incapable of taking the next step. This concept of the single person at the top of the mountain or single sovereign at the top of the tower is a false message that the 1% would have us believe is necessary for success. This message is meant to keep us down because it keeps us isolated and separate from one another. So let me say this clearly. No one, not even the most rich and powerful people on this planet, got to where they are alone. They have teams, advisors, committees, and partners. They might be the face, but nothing we see them do is isolated. We are not meant to function alone. So what you might need is to be exactly as you are in your brilliance and creative genius, alongside a grounded partner who can stay with you in the middle. I partner with diverse thinkers, creatives, innovators, and artists who think in spirals and layers rather than straight lines. These are individuals with large-scale visions who feel the pressure of delivery and completion. I help translate the cyclical and intuitive into the calm, strategic, and linear without stripping the soul of the work. This might look like a film that has lived in your head for years, or a body of expertise that deserves a real structure to teach and share it with others. This could be an event, a retreat, a platform, or a project that gathers people around something you deeply believe in. Imagine what we could do in the world, the good and the amazing things we could bring to life, if we embraced our communities and began to build things through shared skill sets and shared talents. Imagine what the world could be if we became more than just ourselves because we came together. This is what drives me to make this podcast each week for you. Now, let's get into what progress has been looking like for me. If you have been with me since the beginning of the season, together, we all took the time to commit to a full assessment in terms of needs, approaching problem solving with the best solutions through our work, and broke down how to ensure our work was impactful. My quote unquote project has been this podcast, my business, and expanding my own perspective by selling my home, putting all my stuff into storage, and traveling into the Southern Hemisphere to live for the first quarter of 2026. So this week, I'm in the northern suburb of Sydney called Lane Cove, spending my days with the sweetest little old man cat, Bunny. And I'm finally feeling like myself again. And also, I really want to go back to Wellington and stay somewhere I can be myself next time. It was very strange going to a place that I dreamed of visiting for years and then be given so many hits that I felt off the whole time. I'm wishing it had been different. So I'm going to need another round in New Zealand. Like I said in the last episode, home is anything you find comfortable and familiar. Being in New Zealand for over a month was just enough time that now being in Australia, I'm annoyed that I have to learn everything all over again. Okay, not everything, but I can feel the unfamiliarity again. So here's what I mean. Here are some examples. My trip into City Central on Tuesday for my course at Afters was eye-opening. Afters is the Australian Film, Television, and Radio School. Public transport here in Sydney is like a well-oiled machine, and everyone knows how it works. I showed up to my bus stop bleeding sweat after going up a steep hill for 20 minutes to find that I was awkwardly early. 5 buses came and went while I stood there. People lined up in order of arrival, got on the buses in the same order, the bus would leave, another one would arrive, and in the mere minutes between buses, a new line of people would form out of nowhere. As in, I was the only one actually waiting. In New Zealand, it seemed that waiting around was quite normal, but here I was the outsider. That said, I was glad to be the first in line for my bus because my stop was last before the trek into the city. Standing room only, tightly packed. It was only about 10 minutes, but I was not exactly comfortable. And my biggest hang-up was that the car tag was on the left when New Zealand's is on the right. So people rolled their eyes at me when I missed it coming in, and I had to apologize to everybody for holding up the line. So then I got to City Centre, and I got to take the light rail, which I thought I was early again for, but Google Maps confused me, and I ran across the tracks to get on the arriving train, only to realize after it started again that I was heading in the wrong direction. And get this, the car tags aren't even on the train. They're on the outside at the waiting areas on poles. So I rode between 2 stops for free, but really paid my way in steps all the way back to where I started. You see what I mean? Everything is the same, but different. What's not the same? How I approach living in someone else's home. When I got here to Lane Cove, I cleaned everything and tidied things up immediately. I learned where everything was in the house. I tested all the windows and the doors. And as I always do, I got to know my new pet's needs and routines. Easy peasy. Having a little face to see, hang out with, and sleep with at night is the best. I'm sharing a home with Bunny the cat, who has already watched me confront a huntsman spider with more composure than I expected. If you don't know what a huntsman is, they're quite normal here, and they're not dangerous, but they are very, very scary, and I think you should look it up. My biggest adventure was wandering the edges of Afters, specifically for my storytelling for business class on Tuesday. I got to wander around the campus. I got to wander around the building. And I took that course basically for inspiration in social media messaging. Everybody knows that I have been struggling with that, as well as grabbing ideas for future client projects. So it was professional development. And while I was walking around, I even got to peek at the Walt Disney Studios Tower and the Netflix animation sign from just outside the places I was technically allowed to stand with my Afters lanyard. There was a sign that said you weren't allowed to use your phone once you passed the gates. So I sort of stood in the bushes so I could take a photo of the Walt Disney Tower and the sign that had Netflix on it, because I was just like, oh, it's secret. Anybody that knows me very well knows that I love sneaking around in places I'm not supposed to be, but there was no way I could possibly get over there, but I still snuck in my own way. Tomorrow I head back And I'm glad I've already dealt with the bus, the light rail, and the nervousness of showing up to a new place. I've already done all of that, so it is going to be easier tomorrow, I think. Travel does have a way of rearranging you. And today we're going to talk about someone who rearranged cinema from the edge of the world. Now let me tell you the story of Baz Luhrmann. Baz Luhrmann was born Mark Anthony Luhrmann in 1962 in Herons Creek, a tiny rural town in New South Wales, Australia. His father owned a petrol station and a movie theater. He grew up in a place where the cinematic experience was not abstract. It was literal. Film reels, ticket stubs, popcorn machines, projected light. His mother was a ballroom dancing teacher and dress shop owner. Spectacle and performance were not theoretical ideas in his childhood. They were embedded in daily life. He grew up in a working-class environment, not an industry family. There were no Hollywood relatives, no production pipelines waiting for him. But there was exposure. His father screened everything from art house films to mainstream fare in the local cinema. Young Baz absorbed the grammar of movies before he understood structure. He watched audiences respond. He learned instinctively that storytelling was communal. His childhood was not stable. His parents divorced when he was young. Financial strain followed. Rural isolation shaped him. He has spoken about feeling like an outsider, about the tension between country life and the larger world he could sense beyond it. That tension became fuel. When you grow up in a small town, you either shrink to fit in, or you develop a hunger to expand. As a teacher, he attended St. Joseph's College in Nudgee, Queensland, a Catholic boarding school. Boarding school introduced discipline, hierarchy, and ritual. It also gave him access to theater. He performed in school productions. He leaned into performance not because it was safe, but because it was electric. The stage offered scale in a contained space. You could build grandeur out of limited materials. After school, he studied at the National Institute of Dramatic Art in Sydney, or NIDA. NIDA was pivotal. It placed him in proximity to other ambitious young artists. Among them was Catherine Martin, who would become not only his wife, but his lifelong creative collaborator. This is one of the defining partnerships in modern cinema. They met as students. Neither was famous, neither had capital. What they shared was taste and vision. At NIDA, Baz was not the conventional standout actor. He was restless. He questioned traditional forms. He gravitated toward heightened theatricality rather than naturalism. That resistance to subtle realism later became his signature. While many of his peers aimed to master restrained performance, Baz leaned towards excess, color, music, emotion amplified. His first professional breakthrough was not in film, but in theater. In the 1980s, he co-founded the 6-year-old theater company with fellow NIDA graduates. This group toured bold, contemporary productions internationally. Touring mattered. It exposed him to global audiences and showed him that Australian artists did not need to remain local. It also forced him to think logistically. Touring theater requires fundraising, negotiation, resilience. There was no large budget safety net. One of his earlier stage works, Strictly Ballroom, began as a short experimental theater piece in 1984. It was not initially conceived as a feature film. It was scrappy, satirical, and focused on the absurd rigidity of competitive ballroom dancing culture. He drew heavily from his mother's dance studio experience. It was personal and stylized, and it did not resemble the gritty Australian realism that dominated the film landscape at the time. Turning Strictly Ballroom into a feature film required risk. Australian cinema in the early 1990s was cautious. Funding bodies favored socially grounded narratives. Baz's flamboyant, music-driven, hyper-theatrical style did not fit neatly into grant expectations. Financing was not handed to him easily. The project moved forward through persistence and belief rather than institutional enthusiasm. When Strictly Ballroom was released in 1992, it was a surprise hit. It earned international acclaim and box office success. Suddenly, the flamboyance that had been considered risky became marketable. But here is what's important about that. The film's visual language was inseparable from Catherine Martin's production and costume design. The heightened reds, sequins, exaggerated silhouettes, and theater sets were not decorative. They were narrative tools. This was not a solo ascent. It was partnership. Baz then set his sights higher. Romeo and Juliet in 1996 was a bold reimagining of Shakespeare set in a stylized contemporary world. Casting Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes was strategic, and the larger gamble was aesthetic. Rapid editing, pop music, religious iconography layered over gang violence. Critics were divided. Some dismissed it as indulgent. Others praised its kinetic energy, but again, the film announced something clear. Baz was not interested in fitting into existing categories. Moulin Rouge in 2001 represented the next escalation, a musical at a time when Hollywood considered the genre commercially dead. Studio executives were skeptical. The production was complex and financially risky. It required elaborate sets, choreography, costumes, and a soundtrack blending contemporary pop with period melodrama. The budget ballooned. There were moments when the project seemed impossible. What differentiated Baz was not simply vision. It was conviction. He believed audiences would respond to a heightened emotion if it was delivered without apology. Moulin Rouge earned 8 Academy Award nominations and won 2, including Best Production Design and Best Costume Design for Catherine Martin. Again, partnership validated. His later projects continued the pattern of scale and ambition. Australia in 2008 attempted to fuse romance, history, and national myth. It faced mixed reception and financial pressure. Not every swing connected. And that's important too. Expansion includes missteps. The Great Gatsby in 2013 translated F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel into a glittering music-driven spectacle that polarized critics but performed strongly commercially. Baz's barriers were not simply financial. They were stylistic. He built a career in opposition to minimalism. In an industry that often equates seriousness with restraint, he embraced operatic emotion. That choice invited skepticism, but it also carved a niche no one else occupied. What helped him rise above peers was his synthesis of theater discipline and cinematic ambition. He thought like a stage director, but executed like a filmmaker. He understood branding before many directors did. His projects were not just films, they were worlds, and he cultivated long-term collaborators. Catherine Martin, most centrally. Editors, composers, designers who returned repeatedly, also included. Another influence was his early exposure to both rural and metropolitan Australia. He understood provincial conservatism and urban flamboyance. That duality appears in Strictly Ballroom's satire of small-minded authority and celebration of the individual expression. He also embraced globalism early. He did not position himself as only an Australian filmmaker. He positioned himself as an Australian filmmaker with global reach. That subtle difference matters. Today, Baz Luhrmann stands as one of Australia's most internationally recognized directors. But the through line is not overnight success. It's rural beginnings, financial instability, theater experimentation, partnership, aesthetic stubbornness, and repeated risk. Before we close, we need to speak her name again, clearly and intentionally. Catherine Martin is not a footnote in this story. She met Baz at NIDA. She co-founded Bazmark. She shaped the visual language of every major film he has made. She has won 4 Academy Awards: production design, costume design, world building. If Baz constructs operas on screen, Catherine designs the stage they unfold upon. And next week, we will step fully into her story. For those who've been following along, you already know that this is a more than just talk podcast. So everyone, it's time to put what we have learned into practice. Here's what I want to leave with you this week. Write it on a sticky note in your journals or somewhere you will see it. Maybe you aren't trying to build a film empire, but I have a feeling you likely have ideas that feel too big for your current circumstances. So instead of asking whether they're realistic, ask yourself this. Where in your life are you shrinking your aesthetic or emotional scale to fit what feels acceptable around you? And what would happen if you allowed yourself to lean all the way into your own version of spectacle, even if it feels excessive at first? Why not you? Try to pay attention this week to where you edit yourself down in order to fit into your present situation, even when no one else has asked you to. That's the first step. If you think that you might need someone who lets you be as you are and encourages your version of muchness, that's exactly the work that I do. Reach out to me for a real conversation about what you're building, what's heavy, and what kind of support would actually help you. You can find me through my website or email, which is listed in the podcast description for you. To all my listeners, thank you for joining me today. I hope you continue in the pursuit of your projects and your dreams. Keep it up. Keep it creative.
Follow your dreams when my dream's crazy. I was swimming alone with something under me. Follow your dreams, but dreams are hazy. Was there treading a pool where blue in the deep. Ooh. Follow your dreams, but my dream's crazy. I was flying atop rows of orchard trees. Follow your dreams, but dreams are hazy. Waited low on the ground, grasping air to flee. Ooh. When the air is thick and the road is long, it's easy to forget how to sing your song. But dreaming can only get you so far. With dust in your eyes, not knowing where to start. Follow your dreams, move through precision. Use that song in your heart for each intention. Follow your dreams, thoughts true, attempted. Your creation exists just beyond the template.